you do your back cover text in Photoshop, there are a couple of things I suggest doing. This is one of the reasons why I do them in InDesign, because I already have a template set up that already takes into account this information. But because I want to show people how to do it in Photoshop too, I'm just keeping this cover in Photoshop. So one of the things that I do not think Photoshop does really well, and it's actually in InDesign as well, is their default justification settings, as well as their default hyphenation settings. And we're going to adjust these. And this is something that we do in the InDesign document, and I already have this set up in the InDesign template that you use if you use the template that I created. So this is, just a no-brainer in InDesign. You don't even have to think about it because I already have tweaked the default settings. But in Photoshop, we need to tweak them. So what we're going to do is I am actually on the layer that all of this text here is. So I'm going to tweak the justification settings, and the justification settings can be found under the paragraph menu. So go to paragraph and then go to your little 3-line menu and go to justification. All right. So these are the defaults. Now, as I'm making changes, I want you to pay attention over here. So these are the defaults that I set up in the InDesign document. So my word spacing goes from 80% to 85%, and my word spacing max goes from 133 down to 115. My letter spacing goes from negative, sometimes I do -5, sometimes I do -2. We're going to start off with -2, and then my max is going to be 2. And then glyph scaling is going to be 98, and the max is going to be 102. And don't worry about the auto letting. All right, so you can see that made some adjustments, and the spacing looks a little better, but we still have some work to do because you can see that that whole first line, some of this is beyond the text box, and we don't necessarily want that. So we're going to actually make the text box a little bit narrower. And then we're going to move it so it's center. And there we go. All right, so now what I need to do is I actually need to set the first line indent. And you can either set this up in block paragraphs or first line indent paragraphs, but never both. Okay, that's a big no-no, not only with back cover text, but with interior formatting. All right, so if we set it up in block text, what we would do is we would add probably a line above each. So we would just make this 16 points since our line spacing is 16 points. But that might be a bit much, so we can come in here and tweak it down to probably 12. So that's one way to do it. Now, I prefer actually indented. So we are going to do a first line indent. We'll start off with 25 points. That's probably a bit too much, so we will go with 20 points. And honestly, the rule is your indent should be the point size of your font. So I think we have 12 points. So let's see what 12 point looks like. All right. That's fine. But as you will notice, we do have a couple of runts here. This is okay, but to be honest, I think I'd rather have how down here. But this, I will not like that at all. But before we make any more tweaks, let's go ahead and go into the hyphenation settings. So we're going to go to paragraph again and go to hyphenation. Words longer than 5 after the first 3. I prefer the first 3 and last 3. Hyphenation limit should only be 1. Nothing's really going to change here anyway. Hyphenate capitalized words, we're not going to allow it to do. Now nothing should change. Yeah, the settings didn't matter if we changed it, but if you are having trouble with the flow and making things look properly, you can always go in and adjust those hyphenation settings yourself. All right, so now what are we going to do to make this look a little better. So I might just go in, and we have to do this two ways. If you try to change this, transform the box, it's going to transform the text. But if you transform the text frame, it will only do the text frame. I hope that makes sense. All right, so here we go. I think that'll be good. We have a couple of hyphens now. So decisions, always check the hyphens because sometimes they're wrong. Grieving, that's properly. Decisions, again, that's fine. All right, so I think this works. I might come in, and we don't have any runts, so that's good. Let's see. Let's see what if we took it down to 14. That looks a little better. Maybe 14.5. So you just play around with it and figure out what you think looks best. But I think that's going to do. So I'm going to send this to the client, make sure she's happy with it. So I hope that helps with setting your text in Photoshop.